Welcome back to another episode of the Driven Exchange podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Send Now. It's the email deliverability suite of the future, and it's what we use at our company to get 10,000 cold outbound emails out every single month without fail, whilst keeping our health in check. I really want to say thank you for the support, the appreciation, and the feedback about these episodes. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy today's episode. Hello, guys. So welcome back for another episode of the Red Line Hustle podcast. And today I've got Joey Gilkey on the show. He is the only other guy that I've ever met that had picked Salesdriven as a company name. I found out that Salesdriven was taken and it was by you. And so I had to change the name to still get the driven part, which is why ours has IIVN. So that's why it's spelled that way, to be completely honest with you. And I was mentioning before, look, I've moved out of this fractional sales space because I did find it difficult. I feel like there is a lot of work and you have to be a fucking grinder, like a top level hustler to make it in fractional sales. Like you cannot be a pussy, you cannot be a bitch. And I use these words respectfully, but if you don't have what it takes to like go through the motions of up and down, up and down, up and down, it's not the thing for you. But if you do have it, this is why I've got you on the show. So who are you? What do you do, and why do you do it, Joey?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. So Joe Gilkey, CEO of Apex Revenue. We are essentially a fractional VP of sales company, but we've become a lot more than that over the years. So we've Apex has been around for about 3 years. We had a different name, as you mentioned, Sales-Driven Agency at one point. Prior to that, for 3 years, I ran an outsourced sales agency, like we've all seen and either love or hate. But exited that towards the end of 19, early 20, to a software company in the space. And after the exit, decided to solve the much bigger problem, which is the sales infrastructure, sales operations. And so started Apex to solve that problem, which is, hey, what does process, people, tech, enablement, all that need to look like in an organization that even if you sent leads into it, if you don't have those things, it's a broken system. And so we want to make sure that we built the entire infrastructure. And then on top of that, we've now gone through a couple of acquisitions where we've acquired companies. So now we have Phone Ready Leads, which some folks know of. We acquired them in the month of August of 23. And so that allows us to kind of solve above the funnel issues, data issues, segmenting issues, scoring issues. We've rolled out essentially another lead gen agency. So now that, Ryan, who's the CEO of Apex or of Phone Ready Leads, he comes from lead gen agency space. I come from lead gen agency space. And so we're like, well, we need to still run it back with lead gen, but we need to have the sales infrastructure to support it. So everything from above the funnel data issues down to realizing revenue, we essentially own that now.
Okay, why do you do it? So why did you get into this game in the first place? And you have a very similar. I can imagine in your disc profile your dominant personality. I know that you're. I know that you take no shit probably, and I could see look you're about it when it comes to I'm a hustler and I'm grinding to make minds. Well, why did you get into sales? Why did you get into this space in the first place?
Oh man, yeah, I was gonna say some cheesy ass line like it chose me or something. But I'll refrain. Honestly, man, actually directly out of college, I went straight into full-time nonprofit space. And so I was actually raising capital for nonprofit. And as you start to raise and fundraise in that space, you meet a bunch of high net worth people, super cool people, and so on. And so for me, I got to get around folks who've gotten high up in companies. And naturally, and this happens for any good fundraiser in the nonprofit space, when you meet people and you're really good at fundraising, they naturally start to think, well, hey, if you ever left the nonprofit world, you could go do this really well. And so naturally, I got a couple of folks who I raised from, and they ended up pushing and said, hey, dude, like if you ever leave the NP world, you should go check out one of my portfolio companies or whatever. And so naturally, I got a deal I couldn't turn away from. I got into sales at the Fortune level, basically selling enterprise out the gate. Was very good at it very quickly.
What was the entry level salary, if you don't mind me asking? What was the entry level salary on that, so people know what it's like to move into tech sales?
It was only $32,000 at the time. And again, this is a while ago, but it was only a $32,000 entry. But the comp structure was fairly solid unless you sold a $32 million deal like I did, and it was disproportionately not in your favor. And so,
what? That's huge.
It was huge. It's actually the biggest. I think it's since then passed, been beaten, but that was the biggest deal for that vertical inside the company in the company's history.
That's dope, dude.
It was dope, but there was a cap on my commission. So, $32 million to only get a $40,000 check was not my favorite thing in the world. But in my
that's not fair. You should have got 320 at least. You should have got the 10%. And again, this is, and I'm sure. All right, is that the reason it pushed you into business ownership? Because you noticed that,
honestly, it didn't. It pushed me. So what happened? Well, here's my whole career trajectory. It's interesting. So I was in tech sales, then because I closed a big deal, they instantly thought that I should be a sales leader. And so they put me with the management title, gave me a better salary, and told me, hey, here's a big budget, go build a big team in this new segment that we're building out. Hated it, but I learned a ton in that time. And so naturally you get the fancier title, you get more recruiters coming after you. And so the next company I jumped to, which is a completely different space, going all the way down to the small business world, sub 10 million in revenue. And they're like, hey, we want you to come build out our entire sales operation from scratch. And so I left, went to this company, basically took a VP of sales job, built this from scratch, grew it from about 1.6 million to 10.5 million in about 18 months. And then I got poached again to be a VP of sales of a digital marketing agency. And so all this is happening in like the span of 3-4 years. Took a VP of sales of this agency, had a very similar result.
How old are you now at this age in the story?
Oh, I am 20. So I was at tech until early 24, moved into a VP of sales job at this consulting firm at 24, late 24. And then I was by 25, the VP of sales at this agency towards the end of 25.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Wow.
Yeah, it all happened very quickly. So at 24, late 23, early 24, I closed that deal at that company, 32 million. And so they thought I was like Wonder Boy, a unicorn salesperson. So naturally that gave me opportunities I probably didn't actually deserve, but I'll take them. So I took this agency, VP of sales. I was only there for about 9 months, but we blew it up. We ran it up pretty quick. That was when it clicked for me. Like, oh, I'm only making a couple $100,000 a year. Whereas guy, I know this guy's profit margins. This guy just made 1.2 million. And so I was like, that seems disproportionate considering all revenue flowed through me and my team. And so I was like, I need to go build my own thing. So I left pretty quickly.
What age is this now?
Started my own thing, this was 26. So I'm 32.
Wow,
I've been
you're great.
An entrepreneur for about 6.5 years. Yeah.
Very
I
great.
went for it. Honestly, man, I've always had self-belief. I've always been a competitor. I've always been someone who's, as you see in my content, I just don't have a whole lot of fucks to give.
Yeah.
I just don't give a shit, what other people think of me. And so I'm just going to go after what I want. And so that was when I ended up starting what was eventually called Tribe Prospecting. And that was the lead gen agency that I ended up running for a couple of years and then selling early 2020, late 2019. Yeah.
And then, because so in 2020 is when I started Salesdriven, and Salesdriven agency was going. So what's formed the thinking to say, all right, now I'm going to make it Apex revenue, and it's a very smart move to go from being the SDR to the man that manages the SDRs, because you're 3, 4, 5xing your income, the revenue you can get from being in that type of operation. Is a very smart move. But why did you do it? What made
we made the transition from a branding. Yeah, the brand perspective was a couple of reasons. One, when we started Salesdriven Agency, our target was marketing agencies, digital marketing agencies specifically. And so when we said we were going to be sales-driven agency, we were kind of playing on the fact that we were going to stay in that space of like, hey, we're just going to help 7- and 8-figure agencies build out their sales operation. And so we're going to help them become sales-driven. And that's kind of how we built the company around. But as we grew, we became far more of like a revenue ops type of offer. And we started to branch outside of agencies. And so I was like, well, having our name revolve around a space that is not our only niche and is becoming less and less of our niche doesn't make a ton of sense. And so what do we want to do? And then secondly, from a branding perspective, like I want the brand of the company to embody my personality, which I am somewhat of that apex alpha male predator. I live on a, I live on a 70-acre farm. I shoot guns for fun. I'm 6'3", 250 pounds, like former Division I football. Like I'm just an alpha.
I love it. It's like okay, so you're the T-Rex. You want to be the T-Rex. It makes sense. I get it.
I walk in the room and people tend to notice me. Yeah, and it's not a flex as much as like I'm just a big dude, and I don't really help that. Outside of lifts heavy ass weights, but so that was kind of the whole thing. Was like, hey, what do we want to be? We want to be like the apex predator in the space. We want to be known. We want to be at the pinnacle, the top. And then we're no longer just about sales, but we're about revenue. And so that was kind of the impetus there for changing the name and the brand.
Well, man, it's a very, very smart move. Very, very smart move. And I'm sure that you went through a ton of failures to get to that point, and that's what a lot of this show is about. Tons. It's like how do you get over the fact that fucking up sometimes is okay. Having those failures is okay as long as you learn, bounce back. And number two, and like the main part about bouncing back is the execution. There's a lot of people, like I say, they talk a lot of shit, but they never can execute. So I call it accelerated learning. Biggest failure for you. What was the most transformative failure that transformed you into who you are today?
Man, I love that accelerated learning term. I mean, I've had plenty of failure. I would say the biggest one was actually last year, so 2022. We grew rapidly. So we were about mid-year, we were growing by about 12 employees a month.
Wow.
And so we were scaling up rapidly. Revenue was scaling up by like $1 million ARR per month. And so we were scaling very fast, but we were hiring the wrong people. We were structuring the organization probably in an inefficient way. I put the wrong leaders in place. I had a business partner that was not aligned with our future. And so I kind of allowed people to build the infrastructure of the company in a direction that was not mapping to our, what we call singularity of focus, our actual true North Star goal. And so it basically forced me to do a couple things. One, I bought out the business partner. So I struck a check, bought this guy out, bought back the 23% equity that he owned. And then on top of that, I just started letting people, I just started literally lopping off entire departments within our company to restructure the organization the way I wanted it to be and the way that it needed to be for us to scale and hit our growth, right? So that singularity of focus for us, had to become the North Star, and it had to be the lens in which we made all of our decisions through, and we got away from that. And so I basically said, I'm taking the reins back on operations just as much as I'm taking it over on the visionary side as the CEO. And I'm going to build this thing back the way it needs to be built. And I'm going to tear it down in the meantime because I've made the mistakes, and the mistakes have to be righted. And so I would say that's probably the biggest mistake, bringing the wrong people on at a leadership level, and then not forcing the company to make decisions through a singular lens that is our focus.
When did you know? So I went through something exactly like you in terms of my business partner. When did you know it was the right time to cut the cord?
I've done it twice now in my career, and so I've gone through it before. I think when I started to see that the company culture was slipping at the hands of this individual. Now, I'll preface it with, he's a great human being. I like him a lot. he the hats that I had him wearing that he said that he was going to be best suited for and thus earned equity to wear those hats, he was not doing those to the standard in which we hold ourselves to as a company. And so because of that, people
Understood.
underneath him did not start to respect him. People underneath him, I could start seeing the clamoring in the background, and I'd start hearing from people that people are shit talking this guy or that guy and they disagree with this. So I could kind of start seeing the culture was starting to unfold a little bit. And so that's when I made the decision of like, hey, this is like, you are beyond repair. Not you as a human being, but like you in this organization is beyond repair, and I've got to cut ties.
I love that, man. That's a bold
small.
move. Wow,
Yeah,
wow. Okay, so are you the type of person that likes to go fast too, in terms of building business, build rapidly, generate money, generate leads very fast, and an abundance of them, generate money fast, basically make 10 times more than you can spend, if not 100 times, if you're able to do that. I didn't get as fortunate as that. But do you believe in that kind of vision, or are you a paced? Obviously, everything will be calculated.
Sure, I think as I have matured in my career and experienced loss and wins, and I've realized that my answer to your question, 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, would say yes. I'm like the all gas, no brakes type of guy, and I still kind of personify that a little bit. But ultimately, what I've started to learn, I have this mantra that I believe, which is think big, grow slow. And so what's interesting is a lot of my output it is very fast, and we do grow rapidly, and we are on a rocket ship and those types of things. But the way that think big, grow slow actually manifests itself is I want to be extremely patient with where we are going, assuming I have a very big North Star we're heading towards. I want to be extremely patient in the macro, right? But in the micro, meaning like, what does my day-to-day look like? I want to look like we are fucking hair on fire, just going balls to the wall. And so it's a weird combination of like, yeah, I'm a fast mover in the micro, but I'm extremely patient for the outcome to come in the macro. That's how I think.
That's a very, very good. That's a very, very good thing to weigh. Definitely, that's one of my weaknesses. I'm very impulsive. My patience is very thin. I spent 3 years in state prison, so I do have patience. But in terms of business, I always wanted things to be done now.
Yep.
So another thing that failure obviously helps you get to is those learning experiences that make sense in your life, and some of those learnings really do have like a profound impact on your life in terms of how you live. So could you share that learning lesson, that pinnacle learning lesson that you went through in your life, whatever age it was? Mine was 35, where you knew you were like, all right, cool. This is it now. This moment has helped me see life in this way.
Yeah, I would say one lesson is that we just talked about, like the whole think big, grow slow. I think that's certainly one of it. I think moving too fast ultimately is what led me to a lot of the problems that I had to deal with. I brought in a partner too fast, or I gave away equity too fast, or I built a team too fast without the infrastructure, like whatever it might have been. Like I think too much speed without enough singularity of focus is going to create issues. That's one. The second is really interesting, man. I used to be like a fuck culture is such a buzzword, right? Like that's how I used to think.
Yeah.
My whole thing was like, dude, just show up and do the fucking work. Like, I don't want to hear about your bean bags and your kegs, and which I still agree with. Like, I think that stuff is stupid.
Yeah.
Right. But like what I have learned is like, there is something to having, and I keep using this word, so I hate using it, but the whole singularity of focus. When the whole company is zoned in on like, this is the North Star that we are heading towards. We are going here. When people start rowing in unison, and like the culture I've created, man, is fucking nuts. Like it's like, I kind of liken it to like, it's like a group of Navy SEALs. If obviously this more UK based podcast, but obviously in the States, the SEALs are like
American too. Yeah, I know what the Navy SEALs are,
it's the
bro.
greatest
I know exactly who the Navy SEALs are. The Green Berets.
It's the greatest
I know
level
about
of
them
special
dudes.
ops, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's what it's about, man. It's like everyone in the company is striving to be physically fit. They're striving to be amazing fathers and husbands. They're striving to make a shit ton of money. They're striving to do excellent work at all costs. Like when we show up every day, like it is, we call it the standard, basically. And so we have an entire channel in Slack where all we do is basically every day we accountability wise, we drop in there. It's called Ruck, Reps, and Read. And so basically every day, everyone on the team is committed to doing something that is physically challenging. So we call it ruck. So ruck running, if you guys are familiar with rucking, it's kind of a bigger phenomenon here in the States, but basically you throw heavy ass shit on your back and you run or walk a lot of miles. So it's either ruck or it's run. So you got to go do that. Reps, you got to do 300 reps of something. I don't care if it's, you just do abs, right? But you got to do 300 reps of something every day. And then you got to read.
Okay.
And so every day people are basically dropping green check marks on like ruck, reps, and read. And then the response to that person is very simple. The standard, right? So people just respond, they comment, say the standard, right? So it's like, hey, we do hard shit and that's our standard. And so that's kind of the culture we've created. And as you do that, you just, when shit's not going well, people band together as opposed to fractionalize out and kind of like go into their circles. And so that's something I really learned was that culture, if built right, should be a compounding impact on the business. If built incorrectly, it can be a compounding negative impact on the business. And so you get to choose how you do it carefully.
So are you doing it remotely right now, or do you have an office-based team too? All right.
Entirely
so
remote.
One thing for me,
only always been remote.
Okay. So in terms of that point on the learning of culture and how that works together and picking the right people, how do you make it work other than a Slack channel? Do you give each, like we use GatherTown, they've got that Nooks. Do you give your team a visual kind of experience too in terms of collaboration? Do you have not the bullshit meetings where you meet for no reason, but effective meetings like we ran EOS by Gino Wickman. I don't know if you do OKRs, EOS, or whatever the fuck it is. But you probably run your business within a certain standard under an operating model that you've learned works and gives you structure. So how do you get this culture in a remote environment? How do you make it successful when somebody is trying to do the same thing as you, knowing how hard it is and how difficult people are?
Well, it starts with how you hire. You know, like I think it really comes down to creating a hiring process that is extremely filtered.
Yeah.
And you filter out the shit, you know, and so we have very strong core values. Our number one core value that we live by and that everyone has to know and live by is called own your shit. And so own your shit essentially is exactly what it sounds like. It's like, hey, no matter what it is, good and the bad, you have extreme and entire ownership over the outcomes. I don't care if someone else did something wrong. It's your fault that you let them. Right. And that's the culture that we've created. And so really it comes down to how you hire. If you hire through that lens, then you've already, you know, got 50% of the way there. If the person lives that out already, when they join your team, it's just going to be a compounding effect of that value. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, we certainly, we have meeting structures and we spend a lot of time together, and obviously the Slack channels are kind of off the charts. But I also try to fly people in. Like my goal is to get people to Knoxville, you know, 3-4 times a year. I live on a big 70-acre ranch, and I like to bring them out. We do hard shit together. We do workouts together. We whiteboard and, you know, the whole conference room model and
wow,
then we go out and have fun.
Cool.
So we do that shit, you know, like that certainly contributes. But I think it's also just like when people live out the core values, they have a North Star that they're actually working towards. Like one thing that I do unique with every impact player in my company is I build out essentially a phantom stock plan. So they all, in the event of an exit, will also get a financial event. And so,
so how do you decide who gets to be in that fund or in that exit pot?
That is, I mean, they've got to be an impact player. So they've got to be one of my fractional VPs. Or they've got to be an impact player on the on the sales and marketing side. And so, and by impact player, I mean someone who's seriously thrown their weight around when it comes to revenue generation, revenue management, brands, stuff like that. And so I don't frivolously hand it out. And I can take it away just as easy as I give it. Right. And so that's what's also interesting is everyone is also, as part of the North Star, we have a metric for what we are aiming for. Like I'll be transparent. Our goal is to exit for somewhere around $300 to $400 million in the next 3 to 5 years. And so
what kind of thing are you competing with, like a teleperformance? Are you like, what is the ultimate dream for Apex Revenue? And is it like, is the exit in 5 years or 10 years or even longer? Like, or is this going to be a legacy, a Joey Gilkey legacy?
Yeah, I kind of want to like grab the bag and get the fuck out of here a little bit to some degree because I think the sales space is fucking a space of losers. But as a whole, I really do, man. LinkedIn is a cesspool. I'm only there to take advantage of the algorithm. I'd rather just go live on my farm and kind of disappear, but I want to get that bag first. So what I mean by that, though, I think is. So I'll reverse engineer the exit for you. So for us to sell for 300 to 400 million, we have to get to 50 million top line. We have to operate at roughly annual 50 million. And we have to get to a 33 to 40% net profit margin. That puts us at doing 15 to 20 million EBITDA earnings before interest, taxes, so on and so forth. Profit. When you get to that category with the type of business we have, which is a tech-enabled service company, we essentially can exit for anywhere between a 15 and 20x EBITDA, not revenue. And so if we're doing 15 million and we sell for a 15x, we will sell for 300 million. If we are, is that right? 15? Yeah. So somewhere in that range. If we are doing,
it makes sense.
20 million out of 20x, we are obviously selling for 400 million. I think my math was off there. But either way, I think it's between 180 and 400
I get what you're saying. So who's going to replace you, though? Because that's the one thing that you can't, I'm sure you know that by now, you can't be replaced. So how is the company going to be as successful as it is without the fire and drive that you have?
Well, I think there's a couple parts. I am not in delivery, so I don't touch clients. People think I do because I'm loud on LinkedIn, right? But I don't touch clients. Yeah, it was my vision, but my vision has been turned into systems and processes, and now people have taken over the delivery side of the company. Lead gen outside of LinkedIn is entirely separate from me. So I have SDRs and sales development team that's actually driving leads to the business. I'm still closing like our larger deals. And so that's the one area where I'm going to replace myself, but that's going to be easy. That can happen in the next 2 years easily.
Yeah.
Content on LinkedIn is the one, like, we'll see. I might eventually, once we get to a certain level, I'll probably just stop posting on LinkedIn and stop caring. Because the business is kind of self-sustaining itself and growing without me.
Of course.
But I'm actually less important to the business. Give me 12 months and I'm fairly irrelevant in my own business outside of like just leadership. And leadership can be replaced. And so that's kind of where I look at it.
So a question for you. Apex Revenue running the way it is and generating the money it is at the pace it is must be running with great systems and great processes. What type of infrastructure then have you put in place in terms of like what system are you using, or what system do you recommend a younger lad to use to build a successful, structured business where the pieces make sense, people understand processes, they read the shit and it makes sense and they can do it without asking 100 fucking questions? Tell us about that system and what should be used. Or not used, really, even both.
Well, there is process management and there is project management. I think that process management is twofold. One is you have to have a centralized hub where you actually document your standard operating procedures, your processes, checklists, so on. And so we use
Okay.
Notion for like master
All right.
process documentation and SOPs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Notion.so, and then from a project management perspective, meaning the place where we actually deploy those processes and work them into projects, we use Monday.com.
Okay, very interesting. Yep.
Yeah, we used to be on ClickUp. But we shifted to Monday this past year. And it's just a lot cleaner. It's simpler to use, and for as robust as what we offer, it's actually fairly simple to deliver so long as the system works well. So Monday is what we predominantly work off of. Our CRM, we actually have both HubSpot and Salesforce.
Okay.
Mostly because
spend.
when we acquired, yeah, right.
You must be making some dough because the Salesforce is huge. That isn't, so carry on.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, and we spend more on FrontSpin actually. So FrontSpin is our dialer. We spend about $9 or $10 a month on FrontSpin, but that's because we have a substantial team that's dialing. So basically HubSpot and Salesforce. We use FrontSpin for dialer. We use SmartLead for cold email. We actually use HubSpot for all of our billing. And so HubSpot has they've basically created a partnership with Stripe, and they've created their own payment processor inside of HubSpot. And so directly out of HubSpot, where we do deal management, you can do auto recurring ACH, auto recurring credit card. You can manage invoices. You can manage subscriptions, all out of HubSpot. And so it allows us to kind of have a very seamless place to do that. Our contract software we use is PandaDoc. We've used that for basically all 3 years of this business. I'm pretty sure that's it. I mean, obviously Slack. We stay fairly lean on the. That's one thing I've learned is simple scales, complex fails. And so the more complicated you make your system, the more difficult it is to scale it. The more difficult it is to transfer the knowledge to someone else to do it. The more difficult it is to hire someone into it.
So how do you kind of structure your month, your weeks and months so the team successfully delivers what you tell them to do? Are you is it
so it
2 or 3 meetings a week, or is there a specific type of meeting? Do you guys run like what? How do you what would you advise the audience to do?
So every Monday we have a leadership team meeting, which is basically the heads of every department. We get together and we're kind of talking more about like the high level financials and some of the metrics that are important at what we call evergreen metrics and North Star metrics, which are like the highest level metrics.
Of course.
And then that's where we also talk about problems and issues at a company level. And then later on Monday, we have what we call a North Star meeting, which is basically an entire team meeting. And that's where we go over kind of like what EOS runs from like a L10 meeting, right?
Okay,
it's good
I
news.
love it that you know that.
Yeah, good news report. It's it's all about like good news report at first, and then we jump into the numbers. And so we look at like departmental numbers that are important. So we look at like, hey, how many leads came in through outbound? How many leads came in through inbound? How many came through referrals? How many came through partners? We have all that. And then we move over into operations. And so it's, hey, how many new clients have we onboarded? How many have we offboarded? Obviously the goal is 0, but you might have 1 or 2 occasionally. And then we have finance, like what's our current net profit, those type of things. So we go over our metrics, and then we go into kind of like an issues time, similar to L10, where it's like, hey, what are pressing issues? What to-dos come off of those issues? How do we solve those in the time that we have? Outside of that, everything else is more departmental. And so like our fractional VPs of sales, we have basically the leader of that department is our CRO. His name is Corey. Corey will run what we call a book review. And so that means we're going through, every VP has their own book of business, and we have a scoring system or a rating system, if you will. And it's rated taking ground, neutral, or losing ground. And so it's green, yellow, or red. And so every VP opens up their book before the meeting. They have to basically document, hey, which clients are taking ground, which clients are neutral, which clients are losing ground. And then obviously we start with the losing ground and neutral. Hey, why are they losing ground? What can we do to bring them back up to neutral or to taking ground? And so we'll go through the entire book, through every VP, and then from there we'll kind of create some to-dos and things like that.
Wow, man.
And then we also have a meeting
significantly... Go on, carry on. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah. No, you're good. Learned a lot from mistakes, but and then we have our meetings around our data team. So we have a massive data team. I mean, Fund Ready Leads alone had 92 employees, and so
wow,
both U.S. and international, and so that's an operation in and of itself. And so we have basically the head of PRL along with Ryan and Justin. And then we also have Corey, who's our CRO, also meets with them because that kind of falls underneath his category. And then we have basically our lead gen agency meeting, which Corey, again, leads that. But Justin is kind of managing all of our lead gen efforts, Justin Middleton, for clients. And so we basically go client by client. Hey, dials, connects, conversions, activations, so on. Who's in the red, who's in the yellow, who's in the green, what do we need to do, what lists are behind, that kind of stuff. So I'm pretty sure that's
you
all
do sound like you're
the only one I'm on is
it sounds like you are
only
running
on
that show seriously. Yeah, well, it sounds like you are running that show very, very, very tight. And again, like you seem to know just how each piece moves. And for me, it is a lot. You can do it, but you have to have money. You have to have somebody who's making money, and you have to have cash in that business. And if those things don't exist, the operational advancements that you're looking for don't ever happen. So for everybody that comes on, I want people to progress. I want the 22, 23-year-old you, me, to have the knowledge that me and you have now. So if you were to speak to your 18-year-old self, what's one consistent action that would have fast-tracked your success? That they would have to consistent action
Mine
that they would have to do.
Pretty quick, but I probably could have done it quicker. That's a good one. A couple things. There's principles and there's practicals. So I'll start with principle. The first is everything is your fault, no matter what. The reason I say that is because the moment that you put blame on something else or someone else for why something isn't the way you want it to be is the moment that you have given away power to change it, right? And so I like to give the example of if someone were to listen in on my wife and I's marriage and they were to hear her and I in an argument and I raised my voice at her or called her some ridiculous name or something. And they came to me and they're like, Joey, why would you talk to your wife like that? It's your wife. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, man. But she did blah, 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 right? The moment that I say, she did is the moment that I've said my wife has power over how I act, which is not true. And so I think taking that into every realm of your life, I'm not making the money I'm not making because of me, not because of my boss or my company or whatever. I don't have the 70-acre farm or ranch that I wanted to have, not because of the market conditions or whatever. It's because of you. So I think taking that into your life is the first most important thing. I think the second principle I would give people is a phrase that has really resonated with me over the years, which is I say, do what is necessary. And so success only has one criteria. If you want to be successful, there's one criteria, and it is to do what is necessary. Right? Nothing else matters. If you want to be successful, there is something that is necessary that must be done to be that, and therefore you must then do what is necessary. And so that means to unemotionally make decisions around, okay, what is the next best stepping stone here? What is necessary? And so that's where I'm like, someone's car horn going off.
I know, yeah, fucking bastard.
You're good. So those are principles. I'd say practicals. I would say a couple things. One, build your network. Meet people above you. People are far more willing to give you time than you think they do. If you have nothing to sell them and you're literally coming to them in humility saying, hey man, you've got something I want, Like, I want to learn from you. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Like, go put yourself in that person's presence, because a lifetime of someone else building their network, one relationship, they will open it up to you, right? And you will take
Yeah.
20 years of that person networking and be distilled into one relationship. And so I think really seeking to know people, really seeking to understand people, seeking to actually serve people as well. And so that's another thing that I have as part of my morning routine is I write down who can I serve today. And so I just think about who do I know, and when I say serve, I mean sometimes people just need a voice memo. I'll just shoot them an audio, on
Mm-hmm.
iMessage, and so
Mm-hmm.
handwritten note, send them a letter, drop them a LinkedIn, voice memo, whatever it might be. Like, what's that thing that can just serve someone? Hey, man, super grateful for you. Hope you're well. I saw this article the other day. I thought of you. Thought I'd pass it along. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help you. Like, that just goes a long way. You do that every single day. Like, there's a compounding effect to that.
Yeah. How long have you been doing that?
About 4 years.
Really?
Yeah, 4 years.
I think that's one thing you can really notice about you. You have very, very strong discipline, and having strong discipline is very, very hard. At the age of 21 to 24, I was running around popping perks and doing all kinds of wild shit. I don't say it to be proud of it or anything, but in my neck of the woods in New Jersey, we were in Bergen County. I don't know if you know much about Franklin Lakes, but it's just a very, very rich town. You've got a lot of kids with a lot of money. And when you do have a lot of money as a youngster, what do you spend it on? You spend it on pot, drugs, whatever the case.
Mm-hmm.
And some managed to get out of it and some managed to get sucked in. And I was unfortunate to be one of the ones that got sucked in. And that's why I spent 3 years inside. And that's what kind of gives me the edge over most people, is that I went through that. I went through addiction. I went through that. My younger brother died. I've been removed from the US. Like, that's why I'm in the UK. I lived in New Jersey. I was removed from the US by US Marshals. And I had to build my life from fucking scratch. And that's where that name Salesdriven came in. And that's where my fire, my desire to succeed, that's where that comes from. And same like you, amazing. I want to be in the $100 million category. I'm not thinking small, like, and I really respect that about you. So tell me about a growth hack. So the audience will be watching this. Tell them about a growth hack they can start today, or something new, a behavior, a habit they can start doing today that will make an impact in their life immediately. And that's like it's got Joey's stamp on it.
Man, I hate doing it. I used to be able to say this and it not have bias, but since I bought Phone Ready Leads, I think that's the challenge. But like, realistically, if you ran the same list that you want to go prospect through Phone Ready Leads, it'll change how you do prospecting. And so I think it is a growth hack for those who are actually doing it. So I'm biased because I now own the company and I have something financial to gain by saying that, but I was saying that before I owned it. And so that's one. I would say the other, if it's just like very practical, something very simple, is commit to a power hour every day, where it's like, this 60 minutes, I have to hit 10 extremely high value, unique, one-to-one personalized outreaches in this hour to someone I want to sell to. And so, which is very simple, because that can be any channel you want it to be. But even if you want to just do cold email, it's like, hey, I want to research this person for 5 minutes, which people don't even do that. And then I want to send a custom email that is specific to them, and I want to do that 10 times in an hour. People don't do that because they don't want to put in that effort. But if you do that every single day, imagine, when you do a highly customized, specific to that individual email to 10 people, you'll get a meeting out of it. Like, more than likely, you're going to get a meeting out of it. And so if you do that every day, that's 5 meetings a day. That's 20 meetings a week, or a month. Or excuse me, 5 meetings a week, 20 meetings a month. You do that, and your average deal is, call it $2,500 retainer. I don't know what people's deals are, but say it's 30 grand. And let's say you have a 10% close rate on 20 meetings. You just grew your revenue by, $60,000 this year by spending an hour a day on this thing. And so I think that is, it's not a hack as much as like, dude, just do the work. And that's all that's required. Again, this comes back to being disciplined, is that every day you do 10, highly customized. Don't skip it. It is the most important thing of the day. If you have to move other things around, do it. And when you do that, honestly, if someone actually goes and does that for 30 days and you document that process, I'll give you props on my LinkedIn and I'll shout you out, which should get you tens of thousands of impressions. I mean, my average post gets like 30,000 impressions. So if someone does that and you reach out and you say, hey, Joe, I did this. Here's the results from doing it. I promise you do it for 30 days. You'll fucking slay. And then I'll give you props.
Wow. All right. So really, we're coming to the end of the show. What's next for Apex Revenue? And Joey, really?
Yeah, the target's 50 million top line revenue in the next 3 years. And so I think that a couple things have to fall into place for that to happen. There's not really
what should people be looking out for?
What's interesting is I'm turning some of the moves I'm making is I'm turning phone ready leads into a self-serve software. So people can literally upload their list, pay for it instantly. 24 hours later, they get the list back scored. They don't have to talk to a human being. They just get it instantly. So that's part of what I'm building. I'm also building a research tool. So one big piece of doing really good cold outbound, whether it be phone or email, is the research you do on a prospect. And so I'm building a software now that same thing, you upload the list, you pay for the list, and the list basically comes back to you with, we have an entire system built where it scrapes that person's LinkedIn, scrapes their homepage, their about page, their content page, anything in the news, any podcast they've been on, it transcribes it and summarizes it. And it basically boils it down into single lines that you can utilize in your phone or your email approach. All for about $1 a record. So you can have 1,000 researched people done for you in 24 hours.
Jesus Christ. Well, that is going to be very, very hard to compete with. I am very, very glad I'm not in competition with you anymore. So where can people find you? Where can people how do they reach you? Who's your perfect customer? How do we end it on a good note so people can find Joey and really benefit from a good service that can deliver?
Yeah, personally, go to LinkedIn, obviously /IN/Joe Gilkey. Company-wise, go to apexrevenue.com. Unless you're only looking for phone-ready leads, then you can go to phonereadyleads.com. Both of those will lead you there. Anything else on YouTube? Any kind of, do you guys do anything else the audience can be looking out for? We're doing a massive revamp on podcasts. We're actually going to create kind of a media arm to what we do and create a sales development league. And so we're going to basically create almost like a tournament style show around SDRs who are kind of competing against each other head to head on live calls kind of thing. And so we're kind of working on that. It's not live. It won't be live for a month or two, but this will be sick.
Well, if you're interested, I think a big one would be, so again, you've done two things which are massive, which is you've flipped the SDR model into I own the model now, and I own the SDRs, and now you've literally just catapulted that kind of thing. My idea was to get some of the biggest business owners on some sort of competition. And I'm talking CEOs in a competition for what if they have to be same category, all this stuff. Maybe it's on revenue each month. And that would be an interesting league. And I'm talking, you got to qualify big time CEO kind of shit. So that was what I was thinking, but I'm excited to hear more. I'm very congratulations to transitioning into Apex Revenue, purchasing phone ready leads. Ryan has a huge impact. He's had a huge impact in my life. When I met Ryan 2-3 years ago when he first started with phone ready leads, and he's given me a ton of advice along the years.
Love it.
So hats off to you for doing that, mate. And look, thanks. I hope we see you again on the episode, and I hope you reach all of those dreams that you have in terms of revenue and your own personal being. So
I appreciate that.
Thanks, guys.
I really do.